The pattern is always identical. She gazes at you, not for who you are, but for the person she conceives you could be. You sense it in her stare, don't you? That glimmer of possibility. Or is it a craving? You believe you are being truly seen, but you are not. You are being appraised, evaluated, scanned like an empty slate upon which she intends to paint her magnum opus. But that work of art isn't you. It never was. And Carl Jung, he issued a warning, not with the gentle platitudes of a motivational coach. No, but with the cold, incisive clarity of a man who dedicated his life to peering into the psychological depths of the human soul. Jung's entire existence was committed to charting the territory he termed the unconscious, that portion of the human psyche that functions silently beneath the surface of your awareness. And he unearthed a frightening truth about women. He unearthed that they do not simply fall in love with men, they become enamored with a concept of men, with the fantasy, with the projection. And the most chilling aspect is that most of them have no idea they are doing it. You may believe she is selecting you, but what she is truly selecting is the iteration of you she has fabricated in her own mind, a marionette of the mind that exists to perform a part in her personal film. And the moment you deviate from the script, she recasts the part, but keeps the same narrative. Jung named this projection the Animus, the internalized male archetype that resides within every woman. And when that animus is nascent, unrefined, or unrestrained, it morphs into a despot. It becomes the hidden force that compels women to pursue perilous men while dismissing honorable ones. It causes them to dispute without logic, to command without wisdom, and to moralize without accepting responsibility. Jung did not sweeten this reality. He portrayed it as a kind of psychic takeover, a condition where the woman herself is no longer conscious that she is operating not from her true self, but from the dominion of this shadowy masculine ideal. And as a man, you are susceptible to it, because no one ever instructed you on how to identify it. You mistake lust for recognition. You equate being selected with being comprehended. You accept her words when she claims you are different, when the truth is, you are merely the newest actor hired to embody a role she has been practicing since her youth. And when the illusion shatters, when the facade crumbles, you are left bewildered, betrayed, and shamed, asking yourself what you did wrong. But you did nothing wrong. You simply ceased to be a believable performer in a play written by someone else. Jung cautioned that the sole escape from this psychological spectacle is through what he termed individuation, the perpetual journey of integrating the self and becoming whole. And here is the stark reality. Most men never embark on that journey. You have been conditioned to pursue affirmation, to search for validation, to allow your value to be dictated by women. And for as long as you do, you will continue to enact the same part again and again, being substituted whenever the spectators grow weary. Individuation is not elegant. It is savage. It compels you to face the aspects of your being you have interred, the fragile, the self-doubting, the fractured. It insists that you cease holding women accountable for your invisibility and begin to see yourself. Because here is what Jung understood that most men will never grasp. You don't become a man through selection. You become a man by selecting yourself. You don't acquire your worth through her fondness for you. You forge it by standing in solitude, entirely conscious, entirely accountable, entirely alive. A man who has confronted his own unconscious is impervious to seduction by projection. He's no longer a marionette in another's fantasy. He is the architect of his own existence. Jung observed that the most profound tragedy for contemporary men is not their rejection, but their readiness to contort themselves into any form they think will gain acceptance. You label it compromise. You term it partnership. You call it love. But Jung had another name for it: self-betrayal. He warned that men who disregard their own psychological growth become captives of the feminine projection, molding themselves like soft clay into the forms required by women who are themselves oblivious to their own authentic wants. You cease to be men, and instead become facades, smiling, nodding, consenting, acting, until you can no longer recall who you were before you donned the mask. And women, they perceive this. Oh, they perceive it more keenly than you could ever comprehend. The very qualities you believe will win her love: compliance, foreseeability, constant accessibility, become the very catalysts for her loss of attraction. Why? Because the feminine impulse, as Jung taught, is not lured by safety. It is drawn to the enigmatic, to jeopardy, to the man she can neither completely categorize nor command. The instant you reveal yourself completely, devoid of boundaries, without a spine, you do not grow more endearing. You become unseen, disposable, replaceable. Still, this is the paradox that keeps most men in bondage. You dread solitude more than you dread inauthenticity. You would sooner forfeit your own identity than forfeit her. You would prefer to live as a character than to confront the terror of standing without an audience. But Jung taught that until a man accepts that isolation, he can never be liberated. He wrote that individuation is a path not for the timid, as it demands that you experience a death before your final one, to allow the counterfeit selves to be incinerated so that something authentic can finally arise. However, let me state something that no one wishes to admit aloud. The path of individuation is isolating, chillingly so, because as you tread that path, you start to perceive realities you can no longer ignore. You begin to discern the games people play, the facades they wear, the untruths they tell themselves merely to feel secure. And when you attempt to articulate what you perceive, they ridicule you. They label you cold, conceited, overly serious. They accuse you of being the issue. But you are not the issue. You are the reflection, and people despise the reflection when it reveals something they are unwilling to confront. Jung understood this intimately. He spent decades observing patients who were petrified of facing their own shadow, the dark, disowned parts of their psyche they refused to recognize. And women, Jung cautioned, are frequently brought up in societies that praise them for sidestepping this inner conflict. They are taught that they are pure, emotional, intuitive, and whole exactly as they are. But Jung was not convinced. He wrote that the most significant threat to women was their unconscious animus, the inner voice that speaks with a deceptive confidence, a fraudulent authority, and a specious moral high ground. He warned that if a woman fails to face and integrate this inner masculine force, she becomes its captive, projecting it onto every man she encounters and holding them responsible for the very battle she declines to wage internally. And there you stand, believing yourself her rescuer, thinking you will be the one who is different, believing that if you just love her intensely enough, prove your worth loudly enough, perform expertly enough, she will at last choose you for who you are. But that is not the way projection functions. Jung taught that projection is a bandit. It pilfers reality, substituting it with a phantasm. And until both men and women awaken from that phantasm, they are fated to reenact the same tragic play over and over, with each blaming the other, never seeing that they are both partners in a dance with shadows. And in this lies the ultimate irony. The very woman who once viewed you as a hero will eventually cast you as the villain. This is not due to any change in you, but because of your failure to embody the fantasy she imposed upon you. And she will not even know she is doing it. Jung called this psychological betrayal unavoidable when neither individual assumes responsibility for their own internal world. You did not lie to her. You did not betray her. You merely let down the unseen persona she created in her unconscious mind. You were never that person to start with, and that is why she holds you in contempt, not for your imperfections, but for your inability to perform the myth for which you were unknowingly cast. Jung once remarked, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." And this is nowhere more apparent than in romantic relationships. Both men and women engage in them not as complete individuals, but as ambulatory projections, carrying their unlived anxieties, unfulfilled needs, and unhealed childhood traumas into the embrace of another person they scarcely know. You name it love. Jung named it possession. And like a hypnotized man, you continue to walk into the snare, believing this time will be different. But it never is, because you have not yet posed the most daunting question a man can pose to himself. What if I am the one accountable for this recurring cycle? You wish to fault women, to label them as manipulative, deceitful, shallow. But Jung would look you squarely in the eye and ask, and for what reason did you permit that specific woman to choose you? You see, the man who declines to face his own inner feminine world is fated to be subjugated by hers. You are not a casualty. You are a willing participant. You opted to play the fool. You opted to be the actor in her private myth because confronting your own void, your own absence of wholeness, was profoundly more frightening than playing a role in someone else's fantasy. And this is the point where many of you will tune out, because this is where the solace ends and the accountability starts. Jung offered no simple fixes. He did not provide 3 steps to alpha male supremacy. He gave you the savage, unending work of facing the self, of sitting in solitude in the quiet of your own mind until the illusions begin to shatter, until the inner voice proclaiming your worthlessness without her starts to fade. And make no mistake, that voice will battle for its own survival. It will insist that you need her, that you are deficient without her, that no man can survive without feminine validation. Yet Jung's work hints at something more perilous. It whispers that the man capable of standing without her, without approval, without applause, without being needed, is the man who at last achieves freedom, free from projection, free from performance, free from the despotism of existing as another's conception of a man. And when you arrive at that state, you do not grow frigid or aloof. You become authentic. You become anchored, grounded, fully vibrant in your own being. And it is then, ironically, that women will be most compelled by you, not from your need for them, but from your lack of it. And you will smile, not out of heartlessness, but because you at last comprehend. You comprehend that she is also on her own path, that she must confront her own animus, that she must awaken from her own phantasms. And you cannot do that labor for her. You cannot rescue her from herself. You can only do what Jung did. You can tread your own path with such courage that you become a living reflection, showing the truth back to all who have the nerve to look. Most will avert their gaze, but some, a precious few, will express their gratitude for it. And that, my friend, is the distinction between being adored for the role you inhabit and being respected for the man you have become. And when that time arrives, when you finally grasp that you no longer have to perform, you will begin to observe something peculiar. You will observe the discomfort you provoke in others. The gravity of your being will disturb them because you no longer fit within the foreseeable classifications they rely on to feel secure. Jung warned that society does not welcome the individuated man. It fears him, misunderstands him, and labels him as remote or conceited. But the reality is far more unnerving. You have merely become impervious, incorruptible, and immune to manipulation because you perceive the game. And this is where the situation becomes comical. The very individuals who once pleaded for your attention, your validation, your approval, will start to resent your lack of need for theirs. Women, particularly those still in the thrall of the perfect man fantasy, will charge you with being emotionally inaccessible. They will claim you are too cerebral, too analytical, too remote. But what they are truly saying is that you are no longer under their control. You have departed the stage. You have abandoned their script. And without that script, they are at a loss as to how to deal with you, because you have ceased to be a role and have begun to be a man. Jung once quipped that the gods have become our maladies, that what ancient societies once termed divine possession, modern psychology labels neurosis. And make no mistake, men who pursue validation are the most spiritually ailing of all. You believe you are being romantic when you utter phrases like, "I would do anything for her," or "she is my everything." But Jung would shake his head and inform you that what you term love is, in reality, a rejection of the burden of your own soul. It is simpler to project it onto a woman and appoint her as the vessel for your hope, your significance, your purpose. Because if she bears it, you are relieved of the duty. However, here is the savage turn. Upon realizing she was not built to bear the weight of your soul, she will release it. She is compelled to release it because no woman, regardless of her love, can sustain the burden of a man who refuses to sustain himself. And when she releases it, you will feel betrayed. But you should not. You ought to be grateful to her, because in that instant, when the illusion shatters, you finally come face to face with the reality that the task of becoming a man was never her responsibility. It was always your own. And in that stark instant of lucidity, you're faced with two options. You can falter. You can grow embittered. You can enlist in the bitter choir of men who point their fingers at women, deriding them, resenting them, renouncing them like poltroons who never had the courage to confront their own void. Or you can do what Jung would have insisted you do. You can look within. You can commence the solitary, frightening and freeing labor of individuating, of becoming whole without requiring another to make you complete. For the reality is, the woman you seek externally is a mirror to the portion of yourself you have deserted. Until you confront that part, every bond will be a show, every connection a deal, every love a falsehood. But when you do confront it, when you integrate your own inner feminine, you transform into a man who has no need to pursue women. You do not run after them. You do not manipulate them. You do not perform for them. You remain stationary, firmly anchored in your own being. And from that position, something miraculous occurs. You cease to draw women who desire a persona. You begin to draw women who desire authenticity. And you will recognize it when it occurs, because she will not inundate you with lofty pronouncements. She will not treat you as the final piece of her puzzle. She will not entice you with the vocabulary of wholeness, because she is not seeking to be made whole. She is not seeking a savior. She has completed her own work. She has faced her own shadow. She has confronted her own animus. She has burned away her own illusions. And for that reason, she will not require you to perform. She will not require you to carry her soul. She will stand there, complete in herself, meeting your gaze not as a man she wishes to shape, but as a man she is at last prepared to encounter. And in that encounter, desperation is absent, clinging is absent, performance is absent. There is only truth. And that truth, as Jung taught, is the most uncommon and perilous form of love, the kind that asks for nothing yet presents everything, because its origin is not in need, but in liberty. Freedom to select, freedom to depart, freedom to stand side by side without illusions, without facades, without dread. Yet I must caution you, the majority of you will never know this, because the majority of you will give up before you arrive. You will content yourselves with the performance. You will content yourselves with the fantasy. You will content yourselves with the fleeting excitement of being perceived as someone you are not, because confronting your authentic self remains an intolerable prospect. But if you possess the fortitude, the brutal, gut-wrenching fortitude to continue walking, to continue standing in solitude, to continue peeling back every fraudulent layer you have constructed to gain approval, you will, in time, find yourself at the precipice of something awesomely beautiful. You will find yourself. And when you do, women will cease to be the wellspring of your identity. They will cease to be the mirror you employ to feel like a man. They will become something else entirely. Partners, not trophies. Mirrors, not matriarchs. Allies, not rescuers. And you will love them not because you require them, but because you choose to, from a position of strength, from a position of wholeness, from a position that knows, without apology, who you are. Carl Jung did not provide a map for you to follow. He left you a caution that any man who refuses to face himself will become a captive to the projections of others, especially the projections of women. But he also presented you with a challenge to tread the path of individuation, to cease blaming women for the roles you volunteer to enact, to stop searching for wholeness in the eyes of another, to stop waiting to be selected. Because the man who selects himself, completely, without apology, and unyieldingly, is the man who cannot be governed by fantasy. He cannot be seduced by performance. He cannot be diminished to a character in a script written by someone else. He becomes the writer of his own story. And if you have reached this point, if you have felt this message resonate somewhere deep within you, do not simply move on. Do not allow this to be one more piece of content you consume and then forget. Take a moment now to like this video, share it with another man who needs to hear this truth, and subscribe for more. Your support is not just for our benefit, it is for the next man who is still trapped in the illusion, waiting for his own liberation. Assist us in disseminating this message. Assist us in awakening the world, one man at a time.